welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and tie master Anne-Marie Young. This is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Indeed we are, and we're not 100% sure if Louie's going to be able to join us today. We hadn't heard anything one way or another, so we're hoping everything is okay in his camp. But Anne-Marie
he pops in.
Yeah, I hope so. But Anne-Marie is here, and she's settling into her new home and
Yes.
enjoying the fact that she is no longer moving. This is a good thing, right?
Definitely. And do you know what? I've just been for a walk. We're dog sitting. I've been for a walk, and literally like 5 minutes, there's all these fields.
Oh, wow.
And it's beautiful.
Nice.
So yeah, there's definitely pluses to moving.
Yeah, especially if you're moving to a place you love to. Definitely. Yeah. Good stuff. And we have a special guest joining us today. His name is Rick Heyland. I'm sorry, Heyland. I said I was going to pronounce the name correctly, and what did I do? I pronounced it incorrectly. Right off.
Second time's great.
So, well, second time's the charm, I guess. I don't know. But Rick he's a retired COO of a 230-person consulting company. He started an online coaching and consulting and products company, and his overall goal with the company, which he calls continuous improvement for life, or CI for life, is to help people achieve their professional and personal goals. He's published a couple of courses on teachable.com. He has a book called Live Your Purpose, and he is joining us today to talk about, living your purpose. So Rick, first of all, welcome. And second of all, thank you for joining us on the program.
Oh, thank you. And congrats on all your success on the show. I love the theme, and I love to try to be happy.
Yeah, well, we do too. Actually, that's why we set the theme. It's like it's a goal that we set every episode. We figure, if we're feeling at level X at the beginning of the show and level Y at the end is at least a little bit higher, we won. So that's the goal every single day. Yeah. So good. Well, I gave us the very quick overview, but give us a little bit deeper bio of Rick Heyland and your career and your interests. You've done some interesting things. Hit some of the highlights for us.
Sure. I'm born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Raised in Lethbridge, born in Edmonton. I did my MBA and schooling out east in a place called London, Ontario. I started my work career based on a purpose statement I wrote in my MBA program when I was struggling, out of Vancouver, British Columbia. And then 25 years ago, I moved to the States. And that's where we had the success story of growing our business 100x over 10 years. We have 6 kids. Cheryl and I have 6 kids, 15 grandkids. We live in Draper, Utah. Besides work, we enjoy lots of things like running marathons and half marathons and bike races and different things like that. So we enjoy being active and trying to live our best life in all facets of our life so that we can find happiness.
Well, that's good. And you mentioned marathons. I know that you were in the Boston Marathon at one point, but why marathons? I mean, that's grueling stuff.
Yeah, it is grueling stuff, but you can learn so many things from hard things. And yes, it's true. We have enough hard things in life with kids and work and et cetera. But I think the discipline of endurance athletics, I think that's what I love about it is the chance to continually improve. Like, I started out my first marathon at 4 hours, and then I worked it down, hard work, and figured out everything to do with water, nutrition, training. Got it to 3:30, and then I got it to 3:20. And as you mentioned, qualified for Boston and ran it 2003. But I just love the challenge of trying to figure out and tweak to accomplish your goals. And so I think it's taught me a lot about goal setting, goal accomplishment, as my work career as a consultant did as well. So I just love that idea that my whole life is focused on a balanced set of goals, not just work goals, but family, relationship, financial, spiritual, physical, etc.
And goals is certainly the word, because as I scanned through your profile and then scanned your website, it really occurred to me how often you use the word, which tells me you are very focused on going after stuff. It's a big deal for you.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. I love that language around going after stuff. And I love your other word around declarations. And I learned as a struggling MBA student, when I had a mini breakdown in crisis, I had moved my family across the country. We had 2 little kids at the time, knew nobody. I was the youngest person in the program, knew I had to work hard, so I did. And it turns out that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And I got into this program, and about 6-7 weeks in, got back a big test, the first big test. And I'm pretty sure I was one of the lowest scores in the class. And so I had a bit of a setback party, pity party that night. And the next morning woke up and went into our unfinished basement in Platts Lane in London, Ontario, and said, I got to figure out what I want to make out of my life and do out of my life. And so Cheryl gave me some space for a few hours. I remember reading chapter 2 or habit 2 of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And Stephen Covey quoted Viktor Frankl, who survived Auschwitz, with purpose and meaning. He himself quoted his own mission purpose statement, and reading a couple other authors on it. So I thought, what do I have to lose? I'm trying to figure out what I want to make out of my life. And so I spent that weekend making a declaration. I call it a purpose statement. It was less than 25 words. And it declared who I wanted to be, and it was this combination of, it was really 5 questions, but the top 2 questions were, what are my strengths and how do I want to use that to bless the world? And how do I want to be remembered? If I'm at my funeral, and you can't control what people say, but if you want to, how do you want to be remembered is a very powerful question to try to then reverse engineer and live your life in accordance to that. So with those 2 questions, I wrote this purpose statement that had words like, I want to live my life, my vocational, avocational, and ecclesiastical life, my service life, with continuous improvement and continually working on getting better. So thus you can see my passion for marathons, for work, and why I got into. So anyhow, a year later, I wasn't the valedictorian, but I also wasn't the lowest in the class. But I really didn't use that purpose statement, if you will, or that declaration very often. I was just busy grinding and trying to get through this course. And all of a sudden at recruiting time, started applying for jobs, and nothing came back. And I really, I stopped. And then all of a sudden I saw this one ad that Walt and Anne-Marie, I'm not exaggerating or trying to make a grand effect, but almost had the exact same words as my purpose statement.
Ooh.
Continuous improvement, action orientation, making a difference in people's lives. Boom. I went home and told Cheryl, hey, I applied for my job. I found it. Anyhow, long story short, I got back the next day. I wasn't on the list. There was a group of 10 from 3 to 5 on a Thursday afternoon. This is 50 plus years ago, right? And so anyhow, I had nothing to lose at that point. So I called up the recruiter and said, hey, they said, I don't know if I was quite this bold, but maybe I was. They said, hey, I think you made a mistake. I wasn't on that list. And I had nothing to lose. So I told them about this experience I just told you, with purpose and a declaration of who I wanted to be and the match. And they said, okay, young fellow, let me pull up your resume. And she looked at it and said, yeah, you're young and you're least experienced, but I love your chutzpah. I love your boldness. So why don't you pencil yourself up on the board at 5 o'clock on Thursday? You can be the last interview. So all right, good. So anyhow, long story short, I was the only one to get the job, and I retired 2 years ago as a COO when we grew it from 30 people to 230 people. And it was just a fantastic experience. Not all level increase, but lots of ups and downs along the path. But I guess my message is that purpose statement and that declaration of how I wanted to live my life. It allowed me to be confident and bold and motivated, because I knew there was a match. And often during my career, I had to go back to that statement and is this really fulfilling who I want to be? Like, it wasn't just, okay, I found the company and I was going to stay for the rest of my life. It was a constant reevaluation of, am I really living who I want to be on purpose and with intention? So anyhow, that's how I got into the purpose game.
Okay. And I think you've already started to answer the question I'm about to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway, because I like to ask questions like this. You mentioned something earlier on there that I really like. It resonated with me. Hard work isn't enough. That probably sums up about half my life. And it's a rough conclusion to come to, but once you come to it, then the next question becomes, well, if not that, then what? And so that's the question to you. If not that, then what?
Yeah, and I've layered these 4 statements on over time, but I learned from my parents to work hard, and that is a valuable piece to success, no doubt. But it's not the only answer. And I'm going to add another one: work smart, and that's what I learned during that experience, and why I wrote that purpose statement. I wanted to live on intention and work smart, work towards the bigger vision of my life. I also had a prof at the same time when I was struggling and figuring out if this was for me and if I could really do that. And he's passed away since, but he basically, I said to him, I went to him, and it was somebody I felt like I trusted already, and said, "Oh man, I'm really struggling. I'm working as hard as I can, and it's still not enough. And I don't have the experience level that." So he says, "Rick, it's not just about hard work. You got to work smart." I said, "Well, what the heck does that mean?" My IQ points? No. You gotta figure out how to work smartly with all the workload. We purposely give you too much to do and want you to learn to prioritize what are the most important things. So one of the ways, and I said, "Well, give me an example." He says, "Well, you get 100 pages a night to read of case studies, right?" Yeah, it's way too much. I can't, blah, 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 blah. He says, "Well, what's your area of interest?" I said, "Well, marketing and sales." He says, "Well, why don't you just for the first few classes, really go deep on the marketing and sales function of that, and then get your hand up and participate during that part. Go deep, get your influence felt, get your ideas out there, and then kind of hide your hand for a little bit when the other sections come down. And then maybe the next 2 weeks you focus on the finance." But anyhow, the point was, work smart, focus on, and then the other point he shared with me, he said, "What's your area of strength and weakness?" We talked about sales and marketing. We talked about accounting. And I said, "Well, make sure on your team, you've got somebody that's really good on accounting. And you ask them to go deep on the accounting side, and then to share the learnings with you." And so in effect, we were specializing right there in MBA school, learning how to rely on each other, teamwork. You don't have to be, your strengths don't have to be equal. You can rely on your teammates. And it taught me great lessons in leadership and teamwork about, you don't have to have the skill set, because you read books today and man, the leader's got to be perfect. He's got to be this amazing, everything. But that's not the case. Delegation and contracting and relying on other people's strengths is a big part of self-leadership and leadership of a company. So I learned tons of lessons besides working. One of the others, by the way, is play hard. I love that idea to manage stress management, to enjoy life, to also have this mantra. So you got work hard, you got work smart, you got play hard. Love that. That provides huge mental and emotional benefits. And I think make you sharper at work when you go back to work, when you've had that relax of mind and fun and an energy adding activity. And then the fourth one was pray hard. So with those 4 elements, those declarations, those are basically the summary of how I've tried to the best of my ability to live my life.
All right, that's good. You mentioned also it's just going flitting out of my mind. So I'll skip that comment. I'll move on to the next one. It does it once in a while.
Well, I just want to say, I love all these synchronicities, because you got your tagline. Well, yes, I finished my book on Saturday. And then yesterday I went to my bookcase and was like looking for books I hadn't read. And that 7 Habits of Living Effective, that's what I picked off my bookshelf yesterday. So I'll take that synchronicity. So yeah, that's obviously the right choice.
Still one of my favorite books to this day, this 50 years later. And maybe because I was so young and, influenceable, and I was able to have many years to try to apply some of the principles in it. But yeah, still one of my favorite.
And fortunately, the thought flitted back in, so I can go back to the question that I forgot about. Sure. No, you mentioned delegating, and I just wanted to comment on that that was one of the most important things for me to learn, because once I really learned to delegate, I got a really wonderful benefit that I didn't actually expect. I got sanity. You take away the insanity of trying to wear all the hats, and all of a sudden life gets a whole lot better. It's amazing what happens when you do that. Yeah,
it's interesting. Well, most of the people I coach these days are CEOs or senior people in growing what I'm going to call small business, but anywhere kind of from $0 to $100 million. And one of the biggest problems in that kind of 5 to 50 million is what got you there as an entrepreneur. It may not be the same skill set as a CEO or president that's going to get you to the next level, or to the 100 million, or to the $1 billion valuation, and delegation, and to trust and verify. It's hard for entrepreneurs to give up what they know they're better at. What they're not better at, or what's pure administrational, most entrepreneurs don't have a problem with that, because you want to live in your zone of genius. And that allows you to be okay with delegating some of the administrative tasks so that you can stay where your strengths lie. But some still struggle with this idea that I can sell insurance best, or I know my product best, so I've got to do it. And it's a real trap for growth. And so I teach them this principle called trust and verify. So the idea that, yes, I trust you, Anne-Marie and Walt, but we're also going to build a performance management system so that I can verify and course correct, or you can teach me, or I can correct you, so that we're all on the same page as far as aligned on our vision and goals. So we have a good report back and accountability system in place. So, and when people see that, and that it's a good, powerful, specific KPI driven discussion about how their business is going, either monthly or quarterly, it's easier for the CEO or the founder to let go and to delegate. Because now they can still influence it, but they can hold people to account, see where they're at. It's not just a give them the reins and you don't know how it's going till it's too late. You want to be able to verify exactly where you're at. And so managing by the numbers, or a performance management system, is really critical to good delegation in growing businesses.
Yeah. It's good for your staff as well, though, isn't it? Because you're empowering your staff. And if they're happy in their workplace, you're going to have that retention. It's just a win-win. Yeah.
So it's, I was talking to one CEO the other day, and he wanted to, which is a very good CEO activity, he wanted to rewrite the mission, vision, values of the company. And so we ended up with he can wordsmith it a bit depending on, because he at the CEO and the founder, he could do that. But then to take it to your people and get their input and let them tweak it and let them wordsmith it, get their feedback, and then give them, with their ownership on the new mission, vision, values, allow them to articulate the strategies and the goals and action plans based on that. And you're right, Anne-Marie, that is a powerful way to properly empower, not just hold accountable, like I mentioned, but to your word, engage and empower people in their jobs so that they feel like they're driving the bus, not just the CEO. Because ownership, you want all your employees to feel an ownership mentality, and a good performance management system can allow you to both satisfy the CEO that he or she still knows the business is on the right path and can give advice and counsel based on what their employees are reporting back with KPIs and action plans. But it also allows great engagement and empowerment, and people feeling like they're owning and running the business. So yeah, it is totally a win-win.
Yeah. What's really interesting is, from my perspective anyway, is that the principle applies to other areas of life besides business. I mean, business, you have the ability to, control the ship, the ship of state, so to speak. You can, you can tell people this is what you're going to be doing, and hand off and delegate, and all that kind of stuff, and basically expect them to do certain things in certain time periods. But when you're dealing with other areas of life, you don't really have that ability. I mean, it's you can't really go around. You could try if you want to, but if you try to micromanage everybody else in your life, you're going to lose them all. So that doesn't really work too well. But what you can do is you can still use the delegation approach, just by not so much it's something that you have the authority to give a job on, but rather learning to trust that somebody else can do something that you're hoping is going to get done. Because really, that's the big part of delegation. It isn't so much being able to hand it off. Anybody can hand it off. It's being willing to trust.
Yeah, and that's why I use that word, trust and verify. Where I think there was another point in where you were going there too, Walt, that I just wanted to highlight. It doesn't just work. These principles work for business management. They also work for personal management. For example, if I'm setting goals in finance, spiritual life, social life, relationships, health, fitness, whatever my balanced set of goals are, I'm not an expert in all those areas. I might need to get mentors to help me get smarter with my finances rather than say, oh, I'm just not good with money. I guess I just got to earn more. Or I'm not good with health. I don't understand weight loss. So don't just struggle, get a mentor, get somebody that knows what they're doing in the craft. And it's not necessarily the same person that's great at finances. So in my 30s and 40s, I had a mentorship council. And for each one of my goals, I would share monthly my finance goals, and I would share it with my finance mentor. And what do you think? So I built accountability in, big time accountability, because I knew I told him I was going to share it. So I got to work on improving it. And then to get feedback from experts that have done it and or accomplished it. And you can apply that to any area of your life. Don't just try to figure it out on your own. Don't just be a hero. Get help from mentors, cheerleaders, advisors that'll be in your corner. My wife calls it balcony people. Make sure that you have balcony people in there cheering you on, supporting you, bringing positive accountability, positive ideas, positive encouragement for your goals in each one of your lives. But also make sure you have experts as well. Just like we rely on business. CEOs don't pretend to know everything in accounting or finance or marketing. They hire experts to help them accomplish their goals. And you can do the same thing in personal development. But too many of us like to set New Year's resolutions. And the data says we only accomplish 20% of those. I wonder why. And often in October, we pull those out of our desk. We blow off the dust on it and say, well, yeah, that's right. I was going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro this year, but I got busy. Or I was going to go on a weekly date with my child, but I got busy. And it wasn't like I was lazy. I mean, your time in our life today can get sucked so fast.
Oh, God.
And so you have to be prioritized and focused and make sure you got positive accountability and support in your business life and in your personal development life in order to accomplish your goals. But anyhow, you got me all excited, but it applies to personal as well.
Yeah, I think you did a great job explaining that too.
Yeah, one of the most powerful things that I heard is don't invest in things, invest in yourself. And that's what I started to do after that.
Yeah.
Because it's
this principle of self-care, Anne-Marie, as you're supporting or underlining, is not just for non-busy people. I've heard people say, well, when I get out of debt, then I'll budget.
It doesn't work that way. I can attest to that.
When I get less busy, then I'll eat better and exercise. The point of self-care, the point of taking care of yourself is so that you can be your best self. I'm coaching a lot of sales managers and entrepreneurs right now on business growth. And you'd be surprised, maybe you wouldn't, how many people don't take time for self-care. And I try to build that argument with them that if you want to be your best self for your new clients or for any client, you have to do your self-care. If you want to be your best self for your family, you have to do your self-care. You can't run yourself ragged without exercise or meditation or spiritual, emotional development, whatever your goals are, and expect to be your best self for your family, your relationships, your clients. Impossible. You'll burn out. And that's not a satisfying feeling for any client to have their key supplier get burnout. So self-care, I could go on all day, but it is such a critical principle for business success and for personal success.
Yeah,
amen to that.
Yeah, because we talk about it a lot. And one of the ways that I like to express it is if we were to treat our best friends the way we treat ourselves, we wouldn't have any best friends. It's like across the board, everybody's really rough on themselves.
Amen, brother. So let me take that even one more. If we were to say to our friends what we say to ourselves in our head, we wouldn't have any friends.
No, we wouldn't.
If you treated your friends like you did yourself sometimes. Rick, you idiot. How could you fail? How could you do that? How could you yell at your kids? How could you forget? We're pretty brutal. And I often tell the people, hey, be nice to my friend. Talking about themselves, when I hear them talk ugly about themselves or a failure. You can't learn from that if you are so negative. People think, oh, that'll motivate me never to do that again. But
actually, it does the opposite.
It does the opposite.
Yeah.
It does the exact opposite. So be nice to yourself. Listen to that self-critic. Smarten them up. Pretend he's somebody else. It's not really you. You wouldn't say that to yourself, Walt. You wouldn't treat yourself that way. That's Frank. But tell Frank to quiet his voice and let's focus on our goals and get back on track rather than focus on our setbacks. And I tell you, that's a big, in business and in personal development, discouragement is a huge stumbling block today. People give up on their goals, their dreams, because of some setbacks, and some major, some minor. And I think that's one of the reasons that self-care is so important, that purpose and intentionality, a vision for your life is so important, and that proper planning. I think with those 3 tools in your toolkit, you can out-motivate yourself. People always say to me, how do you motivate yourself? Well, I'm not really interested in building my willpower, because willpower is always fleeting. I don't care who you are. Some willpower might last 24 hours. Some people can last 7 days, whatever. But I'm into building purpose and habits and rituals and principles in your life so that even when you're not feeling good, even when you had a setback the day before, you still wake up and do the same habits. You still get up and do your hour of power with exercise and prayer and study and declarations and reviewing your goals so that you can set each day on the right path. But if you're just motivated by or waiting for willpower, you're not gonna be a sustainable achievement person in the long run. You might be able to do something really in 30, 60 days and then phew, that almost killed me. Let me go back to my life. But build positive habits in your work life, in your personal life, so that it doesn't depend how you're feeling or how sales went that day. I talked to a young salesperson the other day and I say, how do you stay motivated? He said, I don't. The process. I have a process that I know that works. And even if I've got a low sales month because it's July and people aren't buying, they're on vacation, whatever, I follow my process. I build good days after one another. And I know if I'm doing that, if I'm focused on my leading key performance indicators, the process, I'm going to be successful in the long run. So when I keep my eye on that, if I keep my eye just on the end result, sales in this case, I'm going to be pretty discouraged when July doesn't go very well. But if I can focus on the leading indicators that are going to lead me to success in the long run, that's where long-term sustainability and excellence can come.
Yeah, it's basically following the signs. We get all kinds of signs in life, and that's what a KPI is. It's a sign. It's telling you this is what's going on. You know, if you want to exit the highway, there's the exit right there. Here's how you do it. But I keep going back to this whole idea of self-care because I really do think it's important. And I think about the first time I tried to do mirror work. I don't know if you've ever tried to do mirror work, basically talking to yourself in a mirror.
A little bit.
But it's quite an eye-opener, because if you previously had never done it and you had thought that you weren't really rough on yourself, try telling yourself, looking yourself in the eye, how wonderful you are, how much you love yourself, how you're thinking you're doing a great job. It is the hardest thing to do if you haven't been doing it. It's almost like you don't even want to look yourself in the eye, which is a really odd thing. It really illustrates just how important it is to do the self-care, to take care of yourself.
I don't do that exact thing, but a couple other options that people might be interested. I like that one. What I do every morning is review my purpose, review my 90-day goals, and then I write gratitude for the day. And that gets me in that positive mindset of, here's where I want to go with this day. Here's the blessings and things I'm grateful for. Because most of our brains are pretty wired to figure out the gaps or the problems or what's wrong. Just ask our teenagers. We know how to do that, right? But what we need to do to be long-term sustainable and our best self for others is to focus on what's going right. So this gratitude list might have what I noticed are blessings in my life, might be the things I want to recognize in others and in my workplace.
Sure.
So that I can pump them up or tell them that, you know, as president or CEO, I notice what they're doing. And so it just brings a very positive approach to each day, kind of what your idea around mirroring was, but it's a slightly different technique. And then you go into the plan of the day and your top 3 priorities after you've kind of set that foundation of where are you trying to take your life goals, purpose, what's my blessings from yesterday, what's my plan today. And it's quite a powerful little way to organize your brain and your life.
It's a really remarkable thing. This kind of fits in nicely with the topic, the overall theme of the show that we talk about a lot, how we bring things into our lives. It's amazing how when we consistently focus our attention in certain ways, we tend to get those certain kinds of things back. Self-criticism almost inevitably leads to more and more opportunities to criticize. Focusing on things that are going wrong inevitably leads to finding more things going wrong. Finding things that are going right, well, first of all, it takes a little bit of doing because you're used to doing the other. But once you get into that flow, then all of a sudden things start going right. And it's almost like a shock when it first happens, because you're so used to the other flow, the other pattern, and now you've established this new pattern. It's almost like you're living in a new house and you don't know where any of the furniture is. It's like, what happened here? Until you get used to it. But it can be disorienting at first.
Yeah, especially if you're used to being your mantra, or you built your, self-esteem or profile around, I'm a really good problem solver. And sometimes with a spouse or even at work, that's not what's needed.
Yeah.
And so if you're good with a hammer and you use the hammer on everything, you got to develop a couple other tools in the toolkit, if you will. And positivity or focusing or declarations is one of those ways to stay, because nobody wants to be around the person, the leader that can find every problem and that's all they focus on, right?
Well, you can't do it yourself. I found that when I do that too much, I never find solutions. I'm constantly, I do find solutions, but every time I find a solution, I find 3 more problems. Because I'm always looking for the problems. I'm always looking, well, okay, there's a problem here. I know there's a problem. Got to fix the problem. Where's the problem? And you never get out of problem solving mode. You're always solving problems after a while, and it wears you down.
Yeah, and it might feel good to the ego because everyone's coming to you and you got to figure it out. But it's not how to 100x your company. It's not how to build a sustainable practice with engaged employees. That's the opposite of that. When your ego has to handle, because you're good at it and it feels good to solve everything, but you're the bottleneck. You're the bottleneck in the business. It's not equipment B and C, it's you. And so you got to learn how to trust, verify, delegate, focus on the positive in order to be a great leader. By the way, on your last comment, in research, in writing the book, Live Your Purpose, a step-by-step guide to living your best life, I thought, I had this great experience with purpose as a 27-year-old or 25-year-old, and then 27 when I went to look for the job. I wonder what the research says on the value of intentionality, of declaration of your life. And I call that purpose. And so I came up, and I could have got more, and there's more research being written ever since even I published the book. But let me just read it real quickly, and it'll blow your mind, or you'll say, yeah, that makes sense to me. So the top 10 benefits of living with purpose and intentionality. Number 1, enhanced health and physical well-being. Number 2, greater resilience. Number 3, increased happiness. Number 4, increased life satisfaction. Number 5, better psychological well-being. I mean, all those are pretty related, those first 3 or 4. Number 6, more likely to engage in healthy habits. Less chronic illness such as stroke or heart problems. Lower incidence of dementia. Higher quality of life, longer life. Those are the top 10. There's more, but the value of being intentional in your life, articulating a strong vision, a declaration of what you want to go, there's tremendous benefits to living your life that way.
Sure, because ultimately intention is about focusing on what you're looking for and what you're wanting, what you're seeking, rather than what we most often do in life. We have a huge tendency, as not just as a culture, but as a population globally, we have a huge tendency to focus a lot of attention on stuff that is not important to us, that we don't like, that we disapprove of, that we find to be disorienting or we're unhappy about or whatever. And then we don't understand why it is the stuff we intend never shows up. Well, if you're not giving your attention to what's important to you, to what you're striving after, to what makes you excited, to what gives you passion in life, how the heck are you ever going to find it?
Yeah. We just talked about the 2 Ds are the biggest roadblocks to success and goals. We already talked about discouragement and setback. The other one is distraction. Mm-hmm. It is so busy to fill your life. I got to watch this show. I got to take my kid to soccer. I've got to work. And so if you're not intentional with how you want to live it, a week, a month could go by and you never got to exercise, or you never got to call your mother, or you never got, not because you're a bad person, because you got so busy and distracted with everything there is to do. It's exhausting. And so, one of the things I'm very proud of is, I traveled a lot for 20 years when we were building that consulting company. most of my clients weren't in Utah. They were in California and Texas and Alberta, et cetera. Because I knew the power of being intentional, I didn't want to be the husband and father that was just too busy building a career. And so I'd set these goals to have dates with my kids, and we had 6. So it took a little bit of planning and energy, and I'd come home exhausted on a Friday, but I knew with that sweetheart little girl, I had promised an ice cream date, and so even though I was exhausted, off we went, right? And that's the power of intentionality. If I hadn't have intentionally said, this is who I want to be and the connection I want to make, and know how important that was to her, that would have been super easy to blow off. And because I was too tired or too discouraged or too distracted. So yeah, it keeps you fighting off the stumbling blocks to success when you're super intentional.
Ironically, too, with that daughter who you were too exhausted, but you decided to go do it anyway, that probably re-energized you. Probably gave you the one thing you really needed more than anything else. But the initial the initial inclination was to dismiss it. Oh, I'm too tired to do all that, when that was the one thing you needed.
Isn't that the truth? Sometimes we say, oh, I don't want to go to that party or that get together in my neighborhood. I'm too tired. And yet sometimes that's the best thing you could do.
Yeah, right.
Self-care says, yes, listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're truly overwhelmed, be okay with saying no and having a night at home. Yes. But also be aware that sometimes that connection that you can find, that human connection,
yes,
with your neighbors might be just exactly what you need. So it is a tough thing to be able to say, all right, is this really one of those nights I should stay home and just relax and unwind? Or should I go seek that connection and see if that can help? So yeah, it's a tough judgment call to which is the right thing to do. And both are acceptable answers.
Yeah, that's a good thing to remember too. I'm going to bring something in. It's a study that I referred to a lot because I think it's very, very important. And so I keep talking about hammering. This is something I like to hammer because it's a good one to hammer. If you're going to hammer something, you might as well hammer something good. But this is a study that was conducted by Sean Aker, who is one of the spokesmen for the relatively new positive psychology movement. And he did this study when he was at Harvard University. He surveyed, I think he surveyed about 20% of the entire school. So this is a pretty good sized survey. And the purpose of the survey was to identify the factors that led to people's success. Obviously, in this case, he was surveying, Harvard students, very advanced students, and probably also faculty and so forth. So people who already had a lot going for them, but he was still trying to identify what are the factors that make the difference, because part of the stories he's told is how much pressure there is on the undergraduates at Harvard and how many of them flame out and so forth. So he wanted to really help them out. So that was the purpose of the study. He put together this long questionnaire, and it turned out that none of the questions correlated. He couldn't find a correlation. He would, he identified things like, well, is it your family life? Is that the correlation? Or is it how often you study? Or is it where you study? How many hours you study? Is it how many courses you're taking? And he couldn't find any correlations until he got to the one last question that he threw in as an afterthought just before he issued the study. And the question was about social connectedness, because it turns out that social connectedness has a predictive reliability factor of 0.7, meaning that 70% of the time, that factor alone will determine whether or not you're going to be successful in life. So I want to mention that too, and I want to ask you, in your experience, how important is social connectedness?
Oh man, first of all, I love Sean Aker's work and his books. Absolutely critical. I mentor 250 18 to 31-year-olds. That's my church assignment. I teach Sunday school. I work and minister and counsel with them. And I just gave a talk actually in church yesterday to this very point. And that is often in our world of being, the acronym is blasted, bored, lonely, anxious, stressed, tired, and discouraged. Those are often the triggers when we fall into discouragement or even worse, depression, etc. But one of the ways to combat that is social connectedness. And even though that may not be what I'm overwhelmed, I'm anxious, I'm going to sit this one out. Yet to be aware that connectivity with a good friend, a trusted advisor, a family member, whoever it might be the exact antidote you need at that very point. So yes, amen to that. I believe it's a highly correlating factor to happiness. By the way, I did my own research after I read Sean's book, slightly different and slightly smaller. I did a survey of 1,500 people in the UK, Australia, Canada, and the US. And I was looking and I asked 50 questions. It was maybe a little too big. I'm not a social scientist, but what I was looking for, two themes. What is the power of purpose? And what are the habits of the happiest people? And on the first question, as I looked at the correlation, that people with purpose, and I didn't have them clarify whether they had a statement or whether they're talking about their kids, their work, their church, whatever. People with purpose were 32% happier. That was one statistic that jumped.
Wow.
If they said they had purpose and they correlated to their happiness, they were that, almost a third happier. Now, the other interesting, I found this almost more interesting and relevant. I asked the question by looking at the data, what are the habits of those people that said they were the happy? It's a 5-point scale I did in the top 2 ranges. And not in any particular order, but the 3 were exercise daily, planning daily. So that gave them small p purpose, right? I got a plan today. I've got to go do this. And number 3 was service, giving, service to others. So there ties in that connectedness piece, Walt, again, the importance of, it might be your parent, it might be your child, it might be your neighbor, it might be a formal calling in your church assignment or volunteer philanthropy, whatever it might be. That sense of service brings all sorts of altruistic, great feelings to the brain, But one of the benefits that come there is that connectedness piece. So that supports that piece, or at least supports and agrees with that piece of research you mentioned.
There's also another aspect to the social connectedness. There are a lot of aspects. We've talked about it a lot here on the show, and I've learned that there are a lot of aspects to it. One of the other aspects that makes social connectedness so effective is that it has the same effect as an old concept called networking, which I'm sure you know all about because you built a company of 230 people all helping in this consulting business. You don't do that without networking. But networking basically is building your social connections and not knowing in advance how they're going to turn out. That's probably the most interesting part about networking. You're meeting and greeting and getting to know people for the purpose of meeting and greeting and getting to know people. And it's a tough concept at first, but it really does pay dividends.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm coaching a lot of sales managers and entrepreneurs, as I mentioned, and Zoom and our remote world is so much more efficient. I don't have to go travel to your office to do this interview or to have this meeting, or I can and then second I'm finished here, I can go get in my pajamas if I wanted to, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But that face-to-face social interaction when you're trying to build a clientele or grow your company or work on sales is so critical. And I think the social experiment we're doing right now is, can you still build that level of social connectedness this way, remotely? Or is it not going to give us the benefit? Because we all know that if you can build a relationship with trust with somebody, you're likely going to get that as a long-term client. And can you do it as effectively over Zoom and remotely as you can when you're face-to-face in their office and look in the white of their eyes and see what's on their wall and say, I didn't know you're an Oklahoma Sooners fan. That's too bad. Or whatever you're going to say. And so that's the big social experiment going on right now is we know social connectedness in sales and work is important. Are we going to be able to get it through remote work or some combination of maybe both? So that's kind of what we're learning right now, and it's an ongoing experiment.
What's your sense on what the early results are?
I think it's got to be a combo. I see the argument for remote. I enjoy it. After I retired, that's one of the reasons I'm back working is I found my energy again, went back to my purpose statement and said, okay, what's next? I don't want to my golf game's not that good. What am I going to do? And so I found these passion projects and these books and this coaching but I'm doing most of it remotely. I do the odd sales training, which I love still, getting in front of people, but I do most of it remotely. But you can't argue. Like, my sons are in these tech companies, and, of course, the younger employees wanted 100% remote work, and management wants them 100% in the office. And I think the right answer is going to be a nice combo of 3 and 2 or something like that, where we can still have some autonomy at home and flexibility, get my work done in the hours I want to for the most part. And then also connecting, with my management team or with my clients in order to be more effective. So that's where I'm at, Walt, so far is a nice combination.
Yeah,
I would
I
agree
think
with
that's
that.
reasonable.
Would you
Sure.
agree, Anne-Marie?
Yeah, because I recently, I started a job a year ago, and we've recently, after Easter, have to go to the hybrid working. So doing a couple of days in the office and some home. So I've literally worked for the last year in this job, new job, like kind of feel like I've gone in heavy boots trying to find everything. And literally going into the office and spending time in the office. And when I moved house, I was in there for a week. I had so many conversations and learned so much stuff. Not like in purpose conversations, but just going to talk to somebody and sitting by the desk and how are you and talking to people and finding more about their job and how they've expanded their knowledge at the company and about the services that we do. It's just been so beneficial to go in. But I also see the benefit of Zoom, the fact that I've also done a lot of personal development during COVID, which I wouldn't have been able to do, and build those connections. But definitely that face-to-face, I think, just takes it to that next level.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that hybrid is where most of the companies are going to end up. And some CEOs are trying to force everybody back to work because they just built a brand new office building.
Yeah.
But, I'm not sure we're going all the way back.
No, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure we're not going back. I can actually reverse that statement. Yes. You were going to say something, Emery?
No. It just made me. I think it's a good conversation. I'm enjoying this.
No, I am too. I think what happens is there are benefits to both, and there's slightly different benefits. The benefit to the in-person, you made reference to some of them, the non-tangible stuff that you can't easily identify. You see something on the wall because you happen to be in the same room. But there's also something different about the body language. I mean, I can certainly observe your body language and Anne-Marie's body language, and I can interpret things from it. But there's something different about being in the same room with somebody. There's more of a presence that way than there is on a remote screen. Not that the remote presence is bad. I like it. I've built a program on it, and I have some of my best friends live all around the world, and I love that. But there's also something to be said for just being in the same room because it's a different kind of interaction. It has different tangible qualities. It has a different experience. In some ways, it's actually even more personal. So they're almost different animals.
They are, and so I often get the question. So how do you? Since we're not going back and we're going to live with hybrid, how do you do Zoom well, or Google Meet, or whatever you're on, Teams, whatever you're on? And I think a couple of tips that constantly come up, because as Anne-Marie mentioned earlier, we want engagement with our employees. That's absolutely critical. And that's why CEOs fear the hybrid or the remote, is not being able to engage hearts and minds as well. So a couple of small tips that people have done that are really helping. One is what we're doing right now. We're all on camera. When I go off camera, or Anne-Marie or anybody goes, you can be, fixing your printer. You could be doing something, and not hardly paying any attention. But when you're on camera and you're on and your mic's on, or of course we mute when we're not on so that we can not get caught and disrupt the discussion. But the video camera alone, if everybody would just politely ask, you're going to get more whites in the eyes. You're going to get more connection. And the other one is, don't just make it a lecture. Don't be afraid to still ask questions. Let's say I just shared strategy 1, 2, 3, and 4 with my employees. That's a great time. Or I'm doing some training on sales, like I was last week with a storage company. Here's the question I want to ask you. How do you apply lead generation strategy? What's your best lead generation strategy? Can I get a couple people unmute and comment? And then everybody else give me something in the chat. And oh my goodness, all of a sudden there's 25 chats and 3 quick discussions, and then you're on to the next point. But you've engaged hearts and minds. You've built You've built this principle and this idea of lead generation and what works with their ideas, and they've leaned in, and you've perhaps got more input than we would have if we were face to face, because if we're face to face, I probably maybe only had time for 3 comments, and then the rest of you are, we're sitting on our hands. Where this way, at least through the chat, I can get people's best ideas and mention several of them, and you can get engagement over it, as long as you're seeing people's whites in the eyes, and you're also engaging them through asking them to build the content with you.
Yeah. I want to ask you about something else too. This is something that may be a little controversial from some people's point of view. From my point of view, I think it's
love content.
You like those? Okay, good. Well, I'll do my best.
Okay.
I am a person who strongly advocates irrelevant conversations.
Strongly advocates
irrelevant conversations.
Okay.
And the reason I advocate them is because, in my opinion, there's no such thing.
Okay.
And I say that because I have, over the years, experienced so many situations where irrelevant conversations led to relevant results. And I can see it over and over and over again. But the tendency, particularly in a business environment, the tendency for a business leader is to want to keep everybody focused on, no, we don't want to go off on these side tangents. We want to stay on this one thing that we're on right now. The tangents often lead to the better results. But I'm curious to know what your take is on that.
Oh, well, I would say to that, yes, and. So Anne-Marie already shared an example of the water cooler, and you're sitting there and all of a sudden you're getting insights onto the problem that you're working on or the solution you're working on, and the presentation for senior management you're working on. You're getting insights from all over the building. So yeah, in that case, absolutely. But I would say in meetings, when you've got 35 people sitting around, and you could argue, well, that's too big a group, but let's assume for whatever reason, that's the right size, or 25, you pick the number. I do like an agenda. I do like us to be focused. Mm-hmm. And you can have on that agenda 20-minute open brainstorm, no dumb ideas.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. On this question that we're trying to improve on. So there is ways to do both. I hate wasting people's time. If I've got 25 people in there, so many meetings are happening in corporate America. I want to reduce the amount. I want to have more, better, and less. I want to have more focused meetings, better discussions, and less meetings. So that
I get that.
Can do the water cooler informal and or build their presentation in the quiet of their office rather than having to do it on overtime because they've been in meetings all day. So I think there's, Walt, to your question, I would say yes, and there's room for both. There's time for both. Not wasting people's time, a focused meeting with tight rails on agenda times. Inside of that, you can have a completely open brainstorm for 45 minutes of the 60 if that's what you need. But I don't like wasting people's time. I want to know I respect their time. Nothing worse than a boss that doesn't respect your time. Gives you all the work in the world and all the challenge in the world and doesn't respect your time. So there is a fine balance between, because you're right, sometimes innovation can't be scheduled. Right? Okay, no. We're going to innovate in this next 20 minutes. Go.
You have 3 minutes. Innovation.
Yeah. So I think it's a yes and. There's room for both.
But it doesn't have to be in a meeting room, does it? You need to be approachable. People need to be able to approach you with this problem. I've got this solution. I've got this idea, or I think we could go here. It doesn't have to be in a meeting. It's like you say, that water cooler, or just being approachable as a high level manager to accept ideas.
Yeah, and this may be controversial, but I coach leaders to not have a 24/7 open door policy.
No, they shouldn't.
How could I do that? I mean, that's heresy. You're supposed to be open and available to all your employees. And again, I try to find a hybrid position for them. You've got focused work to do as the CEO or the president or the CEO. You can't just react to your people's problems. Oh, I'm in service of my people. That's awesome. Then have from 4 to 6 p.m. in the afternoon open door, that they know you've got it trained, you've got it on your wall, or you've got it on your chat, your Snap, your Slack, open from 4 to 6 for, open door. Schedule it. Let those impromptu happen when you can. And then from 8 to 10, you're working on your people retention strategy. Like I want you as a leader working on proactive strategies, not just reacting to people's daily issues, because then we're just reactive. We're not proactive. So there's a balance of doing both. And maybe hybrid is the key word of this last half hour.
Well, it is, sure. Yeah. Finding that balance. I haven't worked corporate in 20 years, but the last time I did work corporate, I was working for a mid-sized insurance company. And like you alluded to earlier, I hated the organized meetings. They inevitably went on much longer than they needed to and accomplished next to nothing. I got much more done in the informal meetings where I just head over to somebody's cubicle who I needed to get something from or give something to. And 5 minutes later, we were done. And I kept wishing over and over again that the organized meetings would be as well organized as my impromptu meetings, but they never were. They couldn't be. And I finally realized why that was. You can't organize, I don't care what size the meeting is, 5 or more people. You can't organize them. They can only organize themselves. People who want to have regular meetings are trying to organize everybody, and it doesn't work. It's counterproductive.
Yeah.
The only reason that I see for having an organized meeting is to quickly disseminate information. And that's a valid function.
Absolutely it is. And so is accountability. Having them report out on their KPIs is a powerful way for engagement and accountability and focused work in your organization. But the other thing I coach leaders on, and this maybe is almost counterintuitive in today's world, is leaders fill up their agenda every day and every week so full. They don't have time to breathe and think and be impromptu and be spontaneous and go walk over to the cube and ask a question or recognize them for something they heard in a meeting earlier today. They have no time to do that, which are some of their most, like, I love having them think in blocks, like, okay, blocks of well-organized meetings with very clear purpose, things we're just talking about, blocks of open door. Your people can, this is when, open doors are much like a professor. Remember the profs used to do that in the old days, from 3 to 5, you can have open door and come talk to me. And then just sometimes have nothing in there and be okay with that stillness and silence and figure out what's the best use of your time. You know the goals and strategy of the organization. You know your people. What's the best use? I got 2 hours. Maybe the best use is for me to wander around and talk to 10 people in their cube and recognize them, check in, show interest in their individual work, rather than just trying to catch it all in a meeting. That one-on-one time is so invaluable, right? I mean, we don't feel that connection with a boss sometimes in a meeting, but the boss or our leader or our peer, even sometimes, they come by and spend 15 minutes on our cube. As long as you're respectful. Hey, is this a good time to chat?
Sure.
Often you're not going to say no to the boss, but if you do, that's great. Hey, I've got this project. It's due in 15 minutes. Could you come by in 15? Oh, sure, no problem. But I love having what appears to be spare time in their agenda, and for them then to go do some of that one-on-one work and recognize and engage employees individually. Such a powerful use of time.
Isn't it?
It's really, really good. This has been a fabulous conversation, Rick, and we really do appreciate you spending the time to go over some of these great things with us and share some of the insights that you developed over the years through your own business experience, your life experience, and not only share them with us, but to share them with the world. So first and foremost, I want to congratulate you and thank you for doing exactly that, for sharing all this stuff with the world. I think it's a really valuable thing you're doing.
I appreciate that. And thank you for what you're doing.
I appreciate that as well. Before we part company, you got to let people know how to reach out and find you.
Yeah, you can find me on my website, ciforlife.org, www.ci, and then the number 4, life.org, not .com, .org, ciforlife.org. On there, you're going to see all my personal development stuff, my book, Live Your Purpose. You're also going to see my sales growth and business coaching to leaders and some of the tools of that. I have some freebies on there, a free webinar, a free PDF of one of my books. So if you want to go on there and find the freebies, I'm also on there. You can find some coaching appointments. I always start with the first call as a freebie, and you and I getting to know one another and see if there's value in for us working together. So don't hesitate to sign up for that freebie and or find the freebies on there. But basically all my tools, products, processes, and coaching is up there. By the way, the book I just wrote for sales managers and entrepreneurs is The Truth About being a rainmaker, 7 principles for sales excellence. And that's also on there and also on Amazon. And so is that planner that I just referenced earlier. That's on Amazon as well to help organize and live on purpose. Because it's one thing to have a purpose statement, and then how do you make it work for you every day, every week? And that's what this planner is laid out to do. So anyhow, lots on that website that you can find either on the personal development side or on if you want to grow your business.
Yeah, and I'm willing to bet that you'll love hearing from anybody who decides they want to reach out.
Love.
I mean, that's what coaches live for, right?
Makes
Oh my
me
God,
happy.
somebody reached out. This is great. I'm so excited. It's a wonderful thing. Hey, Rick Heyland, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. We really do appreciate it.
Take care, Emery.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Emery, as usual, it's been wonderful. We hope you continue to settle in there. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.